Go. And we're going to stop the countdown, but we're still going to remain calm, at least for the start. Good morning, everyone. Really nice to see you for our latest episode of Friction Lab, which today I'm really happy and thrilled to co-host with Vy. Just before Vy tells us what this particular session is all about, I think you all know by now, and it might be actually the very final Friction Lab session, by the way, on NDB. We'll see. But yeah, Friction Lab, series of sessions that are all about exploring all the cringe-worthy stuff that happens in our lives as facilitators or in the life of facilitated collaborations, whether inside ourselves with co-facilitators, with our clients, with the group, within the group, any and all. And so yeah, really a way to explore this, to understand what is causing some, because we know that our presence and understanding where we come from, what our baggage is, what triggers us is really important so that we can actually more gracefully and effectively navigate the troubled waters of life in groups and hopefully become enthusiastic in the process. And so today, on this episode of Friction Lab, Vy is going to tell us what we're going to do.
Hi, everybody. So by now, you have seen me in NDB, and you probably know about my own personal background. So nearly 20 years outside my birth country, that is France, if it was not obvious from my appearance. Today, I live in Sweden for the last 10 years. And before that, I was living in Italy. But on top of that, being in a corporate organization and working in a global function, I'm exposed to cross-culture every day. So particularly as facilitator, this might create sometimes some friction. And we hope that joining up Friction Lab, it can offer you some more awareness and reflection about how to navigate in those as a, let's say, cross-culture facilitator. Good. So, as a tradition in NDB, we would like you to invite for your turn to your neighbor. And the turn to your neighbor today is to share a moment when you were struggling with intercultural communication as facilitator. And tell a bit about the situation and how did you navigate during that moment, and what have you learned? What happened after that? Thank you, Kate. I think Kate will have a lot of things to share. So there will be 2 minutes each, 5 minutes actually, to share a moment, and then we will continue our Friction Lab.
Ready to open the doors? Okay, enjoy and see you in a bit. Oh,
hello.
Stop the recording here.
What happened? Okay, welcome everybody. Nice to have you back, and we are really curious to hear about your moment of intercultural miscommunication. To do this, I would like to share a small framework, if we want to call it this way. And give me a thumbs up when you have, yes, please can turn the screen. So I would like to hear a couple of stories about what you share in the breakout by using this small framework. So here you can see different moments as a facilitator where you might perceive some friction due to cross-culture miscommunication. So please think about the story you shared and try to connect it to one of these 9 moments or 8, and maybe if you can't find any related topic, you can also pick the number 9, so we can have a grasp about your story. So connect your story that you share in the breakout with one of these moments and tell us what happened. I see Kate. smiling, maybe?
So I was smiling because I misunderstood the prompt and I gave a personal example. And so I was smiling because I was rushing to consider what my facilitation example would be.
So was it an
Sorry.
example? Was it an example as participant or in
I
everyday
mean,
life? Would you like to share anyway?
I mean, I can. I'm going to try to put it in the framework. So, okay, this happens. So I live in Germany. I'm an American living in Germany and in Berlin, where people are known to be very, very harsh. And it's not untrue. And so I was telling Mo that early in my time here, this was my first year, my second Christmas here. I had just gotten a new apartment with my ex-husband, and we had these really high ceilings. And the first time I saw the apartment, I was just like, I am gonna get the tallest Christmas tree. We had these, it was beautiful. And I was like, we're gonna light it up and it's gonna be amazing. So I was all emotionally attached to this idea. And I knew I wasn't going to see my family that Christmas. So I was very emotional about it. And so I went to the little Christmas tree corner near our apartment where they had like 50 trees, and the grumpy guy was like selling you trees. And I was like, in my little Christmassy way, I was like, hello, I'm here to get my tree, which immediately puts Germans off, Berliners off. They're like, you're weak because you're excited about something. And so I was like, how about that one? And he was like, great. And he throws it in the bag. And I was like, oh, excuse me. And this is in total baby broken German. I was like, oh, sorry, Entschuldigung. I don't have a stand. And in America, it's like when you go to the store, they have all the things. It's like you would never have a thing without the accessory because they want to, they're really good at commerce. And so, but he looked at me like I was an alien. Actually, no, he looked at me like I was an idiot. And he was like, we don't have stands. We have trees. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have a stand. And he threw the tree on the ground and yelled at me, well, then why are you shopping for a Christmas tree? And I was just so shocked. And I was just like, what? And so I looked at him, and in German, I was like, Merry Christmas. And I walked away. And so this happens, this interaction, this like all of the assumptions baked into, you know, the way you walk through any kind of transaction or a cultural transaction, all of the assumptions to me just like came flooding in. It was a great learning moment, right? So I think in this sense, I thought that I was trying to be supportive in pointing out the fact that, like, hey, I really want this tree. I just don't have this thing. But the finding was that because I didn't understand the way things worked, this person got really angry and really judged me. And so, and then I got angry. And the emotions were showed in yelling and judgment. And then my sarcasm and needing to have the last word. There you go. It was all over very fast from a time perspective.
But as it stays with you, it means that it was a strong story.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we can connect it to number 6 with how the emotions are shown, and as well in the number 5 with the disagreement.
Yeah.
Situation. Thank
So
you.
I'll follow that up with another German story if we want.
Great.
So I used to host a book circle for individuals. So it was called the Emerge Leadership Book Circle. Individuals, it was kind of rolling every new book. We'd have new people come in. I wasn't great about like, let's stop, let's review the guidelines. I just was big like launch in because it was short, and it changed. So there was a woman who'd been in since the beginning, felt very comfortable, felt very safe. She was French. Her English was accented. And a new German woman comes in And the first time the French woman shared, kind of in the group, there was only like 10 of us. The German woman, I think she didn't have some context because she was new, and I think maybe the French woman shared something from the past book or something like that. And the German woman didn't understand, and then directly said to the French woman, "I have no idea what you said. I think it was something like this," and like started repeating what the French woman said, but with this like mocking tone. And then she stopped, and then the French woman said, "I'm sorry, I don't feel safe. I'm leaving," and left. So I had to do a lot of soothing of the waters after that. And then the French woman said, "I will never be in a breakout room with her again." And I was starting another book circle, and both of them had also registered. Like it was like Atlas of the Heart, Brene Brown had just come out, and I was like, and they had both registered for that one too. And so, yeah. So I had another like 3 months of trying to manage this.
So this would be clearly a disagreement between
yeah, number 5.
Number 5. And maybe number 6 as well, how the emotions.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share? I have time for one last story.
I have an 8, a time approach. If in my cultural context, so originally from the Netherlands, worked most of my professional life in Brazil, South America. So I'm very trained in South American style, Brazilian style, let's call it facilitation. So that's really where my heart is. And actually, this was very funny because Ewen and I both had a conflict with our own countrymen, like our Dutch French, like he would French, me with Dutch. So the conflict was backwards to our own cultures because we've all lived abroad so long, that I was planning a 3-day retreat. This was going to happen in Kenya. So I thought, well, this could, this probably be a little bit similar in terms of time management. And the Dutch co-facilitator just came in saying, "That's so inefficient. That's not going to work. Time is money," sort of like this kind of approach. I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, that's why I left. I really don't like this, this like hyper focus on efficiency and time over connection, community, anything that has to do with creating a group and getting people to participate. So definitely 8 is within my facilitation, but either way is always the one. But this one was a very, very recent that I had to co-facilitate with another Dutch person again. So.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Should we move to the next point, Ewen?
Yeah, if there's another anecdote, we can even get there. I think we have the time. Yeah. Happy either way.
Mo, would you like to share, or we move to the next part?
Hey, you guys, mine's just about time and it's market research context. I don't know if it's yeah, so different cultural notions of time. It's just it can be cultural, it can be also based on, I think, different hierarchies and ethoses in terms of what people consider to be good or bad facilitation. So a bit like what Flo mentioned, like if you are the sort who's like really very, very pedantic about time, then you use time as a measure of whether or not you're a good facilitator. So if you overrun, then sometimes they blame it on you when actually, it's the fault. There's something wrong with the process, or it's harder to get. It's taking longer to extract things out of participants. All those factor into the time. But then like hanging above us in the culture of, like how a facilitator is assessed, there is this notion of, timekeeping as part of your skill set. So that's something that hangs over us all the time, in spite of the other things that we navigate that will play into time. Then other little things is just like depending on like which country I run the sessions in, then I know there are certain cultural contexts where I can get away with overrunning, and other contexts where I in fact have to put up with things happening on what they call India Standard Time. So India Standard Time is everything runs late and everything overruns. So it's like, so okay, that's fine, but you have to put up with then your own preference for efficiencies versus their, traffic jams and all that. But then if you go to Australia, then I like they don't it doesn't matter. They will literally point to the clock and say, "Hey, you said this was gonna be an hour. It's an hour and a minute. So are we done yet?" They will tell you to your face. So it's just things you kind of need to be aware of in navigating. So different notions of what time is. Or you can have cheeky participants. So usually we pay people for their time. So for market research, then depending on whether you're lucky, depending on the translators you hire, the facilitators you hire, whether they see themselves as providing a service and enjoying their time, whether they're here more than just for the money is always part of the picture. So if they are really here just for the money, then your overruns, then they will try to charge you, right? And then this kind of affects also like the running of your thing. So yeah, time is a relative concept in relation to culture.
Shall I segue in, V? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And it's funny, plus one on this, because yesterday I was at the moment I'm sort of binge listening to the Workshops Work podcast episodes, and I was listening to the one where actually both of you, Kate and Florentine, were talking with Miriam about co-facilitation and the issue of the time management with your co-facilitator, which I think is a very, very good example of how intercultural frictions can play out. You have a different understanding. It's like, oh, I just use my time now. You deal with the problem. Like, well, anyway. That just made me think of that. Cool. Thank you for sharing these anecdotes. I'm sure there's tons more in our personal life, in our life as facilitators, because I mean, especially now that after the pandemic and our work has become even more globalized, so there's more likelihood that we actually end up in multicultural settings with these cultures. And I want to stress one thing that's important for Vy and myself in this session. We understand culture as it could be any kind of culture in any given place, but we're really intentionally focusing on national cultures and even forcing the caricature there to understand how that particular layer of culture is playing out in our context. And that's what we invite you to lean into also. So one of the things we thought might give us a little bit of scaffolding is to look into the culture map. You might even recognize the background image. How many of you have read the culture map? Yeah, okay. So this is not going to come as a surprise. I'm still going to go through a couple of things from the framework just to jog your memory through it, because we're going to look into that and to use that as a way to reflect on how it plays out in our facilitator context. So for those of for everyone, you can see my screen, I suppose. Yeah. So the culture map by Erin Meyer is picking up on quite a bit of research on intercultural preferences, etc., across different national contexts, national cultures, and she has come up with 8 different dimensions where different cultures tend to play or adopt a different position. And these eight factors are communications, whether it's low context or high context. So low context being like everything explicit, possibly written, etc. Whereas high context is a lot of communication is said in very subtle ways, not necessarily spoken out, etc. So think, for instance, on the low context side, I don't know. Well, the US is probably one of the best examples. Like everything is really, really spelled out, etc. And high context Japanese would be probably an extreme on the other side. Evaluating with direct negative feedback versus indirect negative feedback. So how likely are you to actually call things out? And obviously on the direct negative feedback, I think Flo can testify with me that the Dutch is probably one of the most to that side of things. And indirect negative feedback, just passing on critical feedback in more hidden way, more subtle ways, maybe just the not so helpful sandwich approach and all of that. Not to say, by the way, that even with my last comment, there is no right or wrong. It's just preferences, and yeah, it's just a style, something to recognize that we have a different way of a different wiring with regards to these different dimensions potentially. Persuading, the third one is, do you actually focus on the why, the principles first, really understanding where something is coming from, or applications like what can we do with it? This is the specific case we're looking into, etc. And yeah, there's indeed some differences across cultures. I'm gonna come back to that also a bit later. Leading is probably one of the most intuitively obvious to everyone. Is it an egalitarian or a hierarchical type of culture? And of course, even in egalitarian cultures, again, the Netherlands is a very egalitarian culture, but hierarchy is still there in different ways. It's just maybe it feels less hierarchical than other places in that sense. The fifth one, deciding, is it consensual decision making, or is it a top down, like whoever is the powers to be decide and everyone has to apply, or is it indeed a collaborative act? I think it makes probably a lot of sense for all of us to understand this dimension. The sixth one, trusting. Do we tend to build our trust based on the work we've done together and like, oh, you're doing your work on time, you're doing it well, I trust you, I trust that you're a person to work with? Or is it more relationship based, as in, I know you personally, I know your family context or your context, we've been doing things together outside of work, and so that's the reason why I bestow my trust upon you. Disagreeing, the seventh, do we tend to be confrontational or avoid confrontation? So it's a little bit related to evaluating, but it's also different. It really is not about feedback, but just in general, arguments around ideas. Do we confront ideas or do we sort of keep it to ourselves? And finally, scheduling, linear time, flexible time. I think this is just what we discussed. We're talking about, where was it? Normal Indian time or yeah, which is probably flexible time. Or I remember some stories from colleagues that went to an event in Japan where the Japanese organizers were getting very, very nervous when 1 minute was passed after the hour, after the start of the session is like, and everyone else was like, it's okay. So yeah, differences, preferences. And I'm going to share the link to this mural very soon, and then you can have a look at it at your leisure. And this is, by the way, not to look at necessarily for now, but whenever you want, whenever you have the time, how in the culture book, the culture code, these different cultures are mapped across these different dimensions. So before I continue and tell you what we're going to do with it, any clarification question from anyone on this?
Just as a note, I put in the chat a PDF that I'd created for the book circles that I've done this book with, which goes through the scale and then descriptions of each if anybody wants to have it.
Oh, thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's really great.
If we have a minute, I always flip low and high context. So can we have like a quick example, a solid example of low and high context?
So yeah, well, I don't know. Does anyone? I mean, I've already given one short explanation. Would anyone like to give an explanation? I can double down otherwise, but I'm just wondering. Okay, so let me give it another try. So yeah, I think in high context, for instance, is I think actually you can probably see it, Vietnam, Japan, a lot of Asian cultures, I'm sure Mo can speak to this, tend to be rather high context. So a lot of things that indeed is like communicating in very indirect ways by also your body language, your tone, your implications, etc. What you don't say rather than necessarily what you speak out. I think a low context culture, on the other hand, is a culture where you're going to have a lot of things codified, written up, etc. So you can actually really refer to it and have it clear, like, okay, this is what we've said, this is what we've agreed. It's very explicit, etc. And that's why I said I think the American culture is a very good, in fact, it is indeed showing us the most left-leaning, low context-leaning culture here, because it's a culture where a lot of things are contractualized, written up. It's a reference; everyone can look back at it, and that's the guiding principle, not what you're sort of implying. So yeah, it's a very fluid dimension. And by the way, Kate, even though I encourage all of us to sort of zoom in on this, we're going in this session to focus primarily on the factors 5 to 8, deciding, trusting, disagreeing, and scheduling, because we thought these are panning out even more in the context of facilitation.
Yes, I would have an example of communication, low context and high context. So I have a couple of friends, so a friend that are a couple, French, Swedish, and they speak English together, and they always argue about how accurate the words needs to be. So from the French culture, you can say a bag, and a bag can be anything. It can be a purse, a backpack, or whatsoever. But then if the Swedish husband hear the bags, then he think about a very specific type of bags, and then he can't continue the conversation because he stopped there and he needs to know exactly what it's meant, and which is also related to how the Swedish culture is very task oriented and very clear about what they're saying. So very low context. Where the French, well, I'm talking about the bag. It has to be this type of bag. So it's like assumption that you will understand from the context.
Perfect. Thanks, Vy.
And I'll add that in French, there are a lot of words, as someone who learned French separately, there's a lot of words that sound the exact same, even though they are not the same word. So it's very context dependent. So you can't just hear the words, you have to hear the entire context in which, I mean, that's a very specific example of language, but there's very much a lot of, like, it's not as direct. You have to hear kind of around what's said, not just what's said.
No.
Yes, so depending on the context, you will spell it differently because it's mean in different way.
Homonyme.
The example is often vert.
Yeah.
So vert means green, means the glass that you drink, and it means the direction, or it can mean the warm, the vert de terre. So yeah, one sounds can mean many things.
Or the color, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Do the 5, 6, 7, and 8 make sense to you? Anything unclear about that? All good? All right, because basically what we would like you to do is to think for yourself. Where I'm going to actually put this now in a few seconds in the chat. There's a similar thing here, and we'd like you to pick one of this series of dots, put your name, claim one of these columns of color dots, and on this deciding, trusting, disagreeing, scheduling, put where you are somewhere, like for each of these dimensions. So on deciding, on disagreeing, on trusting, on scheduling, you take a dot from your column for each of these. And if you're torn between two parts of your culture or even more, feel free to add more than one circle if it's something that is manifesting itself in yourself on that same thing. Just make sure that you put then some description of the culture that you're referring to in each case. As here, V has put, for instance, French, Italian, Swedish, etc. So she might use this. So I'm going to invite you to take a little bit of time to do that. And I think is it okay to actually play some music while we do this individual work? Because this is not something that requires a lot of bandwidth, I suppose. It's probably quite intuitive. Don't overthink it too much. Just put your dot. And I'm wondering, Vy, is there anything I'm forgetting? Or that you'd like to add?
No, I think it's quite clear. So ideally you put one dot, how you see yourself in that scales. And if you are torn between two, you can put two dots with the same colors. And that way just choose one color. So we know who is assessing yourself.
So I'm gonna stop sharing the screen, put some music on, put a timer, and then we put our dots, and then let's see where it takes us.
光明，我已望透生與死，沉迷在買笑的過程，去放低不堪記憶。當世上再沒憑證，走過後朗月無聲，甜言蜜語收起。我想說的有哪位想聽？能為你歡喜，我已可喜。若你跟他遠去，踏着明媚，情願埋藏自己。任何倩影為你亦忘記，面臨絕境為你未逃避。慣了在光影裏孤單飄零，愛你但我沒能力，為求在老去的過程，永遠看守這背影。當世上再沒憑證，走過後朗月無聲，甜言蜜語收起。我想說的有哪位想聽？能為你歡喜，我已可喜。若你跟他遠去，踏着明媚，情願埋藏自己。未來明知無人能記起。
At least I see that everyone has done the below part. Let's take just another half a minute. And if you want to add some dots on the upper part, feel free to do so.
我想說的有哪位想聽？能為你歡喜，我已可喜。若你跟他遠去，踏着明媚，情願埋藏自己。任何倩影為你亦忘記，面臨絕境為你未逃避。
5 seconds, I'm not going to stop. Okay. Oh, electrician is here. Okay. So Mo will join us back before we do the next bit. By that time, she might be back. Let me stop. Excellent to do this Chinese exercise. Yeah. We'll keep the polka for some other time. Anything that is coming up for you that you're noticing about yourself, about what you see others have put? Anything you'd like to zoom in on? Anyone?
Well, I think it was nice that we could use more than one dot, because I did for the same line, because I did notice that not in all, but in some I am more divided, or I will adapt my style, if that's the word here, according to where I am. And again, I put it sort of like Dutch and Brazilian, but I don't know if that's really, if it's like that, like it's different contexts where I sort of feel like I'm going to have to be more strict with time, or in others I have to be more flexible with time, or others I can really go for the confrontations, and others I have to be a bit more subtle. So I think there's a lot there to be like all of us working in these different cultures, and especially in cultures that have quite distinct scales, right? Or they're on the opposite side of scales, that you yourself also have to position yourself. One other thing, though, what I always notice when I'm working with Brazilian clients is that my Dutchness, and again, this is very generic, right? Like this is very generalized, because I'm also, if we go into my Dutchness, there's a whole lot there, right? But They also really like the fact that I'm Dutch. So they like the fact that I am on time. They like the fact that I am really straight to the point, that I'll never lie to them. I always say, no, it's not like that. So there's something about bringing out your culture when you're in another culture that can be valued or seen as an added value if done in the right way. I think that's a little bit what I felt here as well, looking at this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for this. So yeah, also so difference, but appreciation in the differences that people bring, and also noticing how you might be sort of drawn, depending on the context, by two different sides of the cultures that are inside of you, etc. Yeah, I can relate to that. When I was doing the exercise, what came up for me was also the difference between sometimes the personal realm and the facilitator realm. I mean, parenting versus facilitating, not always exactly the same. Okay, Kate, I'll take this, and then we're going to proceed with the next bit.
Do we have time? I don't need
Yeah. No. Yeah, please.
Okay. Linear time. So you, Flora, your comment just made me about bringing our different cultures. When I first started, when I first got here to Berlin, I was my first contract job was project management of a really, really large software development project for a big company, and the team was fairly new, and but they were all like, there were 6 white German guys between the ages of like 30 and 37, and me, the American lady, and then one younger Vietnamese Polish person. And so we were fairly new together, and on Good Friday, the software that we worked on, the platform, unbeknownst to us, like launched an update which broke our entire implementation. And so tens and thousands of users were out on Good Friday. And so it was a big deal. For years, we called it the Easter bug. And we spent the whole day doing this thing. It was my boss's birthday. It was like a disaster. And so, but at the end of that, and I had only been working with this team for a couple months, at the end of it, I sent an email that said, hey, everybody, we can debrief what happened later. I just want to congratulate everybody on the teamwork. It was so impressive, blah, 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 blah. When we get back to the office on Tuesday, let's talk about the technical stuff, but I just want to show my appreciation for that. And I got an email from one of my bosses, who was a German woman, and she was like, I have never seen an email like that before. And I don't know if that was because you're a woman or because you're American, but she was just like, this was completely different. And that was like a moment for me that showed me, okay, like this is something that I can leverage, right? Like I was just doing what I do, but then without context. Yeah. So even to your point, I've learned, like, when that is seen as a weakness, when actually it can be turned into a strength, that level of, when you choose to leverage feedback, and also, the context that you bring. So anyway,
I think that that's not necessarily just all about feedback, but I think that's about your relationship, like your relational nature as well. And this is something interesting between my husband and I. He's much more task-based and I'm much more relational-based, even though I come from a task-based country. And sometimes he's like trying to give me advice on growing my business, which is very task-based, right? And I'm like, no, like I'm building relationships, I'm building trust, like I'm not ready to sell to them yet, like, all that kind of stuff. Like I'm around the relationship and he's like, business minded, like think about it like this. So it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. So the value of leveraging or different layers, and and the intercultural awareness, which probably also was something that played out in what you offered just now, Kate. Just looking at time, we can be linear, but we also have some exciting things we do want to do. So let's just take a little moment to prepare for a little. We're going to have some little time for role play, but a little bit of exploring these intercultural frictions. And in order to come up up with that, what we thought would be useful is to think about what we just did, and also on the mural, what you saw on the left-hand side before the different scenarios that Vy introduced earlier on, to, in pairs, imagine what if there was a typical intercultural friction that we'd like to imagine that could really play out in the life of a group that we'd like to sort of use as a scenario. So I'm going to send you in two pairs, and for you to discuss what could be an interesting scenario, intercultural friction scenario. Feel free to detach yourself from the 9 examples that Vy has offered if you find something else more generative, or to use inspiration from that. Is that okay? Cool. So, yeah, Vy?
Yeah, I prepared the breakout. So are we joining some of the rooms, or
I
will
think
we be a group of 3?
Yeah, I can also do whatever you want. You're the breakout operator, so you decide.
I'm curious about what they could come up. So maybe we should move
3?
them to 3 and we stay in the main room.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
See you in a bit. And holding again.
And we do the rest of the session in French
Yeah.
because it's so beautiful.
Boy.
Ewen was actually just speaking to me in English, was just going in the flow, and then it's like, oh, but it's the wrong languages.
Why are we speaking English to each other? Doesn't make any sense.
So when Ewan came to France to meet his family, I met with him and we spoke in French for the whole night. And he was like, "This is really weird because I know you in English, but now we're speaking French." And I was like, yeah.
Right?
This is me who only found out in Bordeaux that Lisette is from Netherlands. We
Oh,
were
yeah.
always, and I suddenly was like, "You're Dutch," like so. She has a very British accent, right? So,
Mm.
yeah.
Good. So, as moving on, we would like to have a small role plays with these situations. So let me, before you even explain what you came up in this conversation, let me explain what we thought about how to do these role plays. So you will have the chance, one of you, to facilitate a multicultural group based on the scenario you come up with. And to do this, you will explain what you came up with, so what you will be directing. So what is the context, the place, any specific situation that you would like to bring in. Myself and Ewen are offering ourselves as participant. And we can either play a culture that is in your scenario. If not, we will play, and Ewen was saying he will be the typical French, and maybe I could even play either the typical Swedish, either the typical Italian, based on what you would like to come up with in these scenes. You can have one facilitator, or you have an option to say that another one will also be a facilitator. And you will kind of handing over at a certain point. So when you feel that you have used all your strategy that you know, you break, and then you will brief up the facilitator how far you have gone and what you have tried and maybe hasn't worked, and to see how the new facilitator will continue. And I think that we would have time for changing 2 facilitators. So among you, you will have to decide who wants to be facilitator, and while you are not yet the facilitator, you can still be a participant, and you can decide if you want to continue and play another participants or whoever you would like to show. So is it the framework more or less clear? Yeah, good. So now tell us, what did you come up with as a small role play that you would like to be being live?
It's not going to be very exciting. That's a problem. It's not going. Well, it is very exciting, but because we were saying like to move a little bit away from time, which is a thing, but maybe we can spice it up a little bit by mixing some cultures. But I was sharing that I recently had an in-person. I've had it before with Rush workshops, but in person in South Korea, experiencing really silence for the first time, like actually nobody saying anything. So I was standing in the middle of a room with a microphone in my hand, 50 people around me, and I was like, and there were very clear, low context questions, prompts, and just nothing. And Teresa was reminding me of a Rush workshop that we well, I think I was tech hosting for Ellie, right? So and we had an APAC group as well, and it was also very quiet. And then that sort of scenario of like, okay, and we were saying it's great for time management because nobody says anything. But at the same time, of course. And I think what's one interesting thing, and maybe we can do that in the role play a little bit. We did have in this Asia regional workshop people from Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan who did speak. So that's a slight, I think it's a different maybe culture there. They were very eager to always sort of grab the mic. So it was overpowered because of that by one or two, in this case also male. There was a bit of a gender. We just came up with a last friction lab session for you, Ewen, gender as facilitation. But all right. And so that was challenging as well, because you're happy that somebody shares something, like we've all had, right? The one person who always shares something. But then what to do with the rest? So maybe we can spice it up a bit by playing that we do have one, maybe two people who do speak a lot, who always are stepping in. Australia also most of the time part of APAC regions, right? They have that same sort of ease to speak. Again, sorry for all the generalizations. I don't think we need to keep apologizing for that, but we are aware that we are generalizing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're here for that.
We are here for generalizing. No, but I just want to say, like, it's not all Australians or all Asia. Like, it just, we are aware that it's unsubtle today. So I think that was, for me at least, a scenario that could be interesting to see what you then do.
So any other reflection, or shall we go for this scenario?
Let's go.
So then I guess, Flor, you're the director, the main director here.
Yeah.
And the next question, do you want to facilitate or do you want to be a participant?
I want to be a participant.
The US director, how do you see the starting point? And so you have 5 participants here. How do you see which culture we should represent?
Well, again, I think we could really spice it up like, oh, exciting. But I think we could have one or maybe, well, in this case, because we're not a lot, maybe one person who keeps being the first to answer and the rest are quiet, so that they could represent a culture that is maybe more easy to speak. Could be anything European or anything maybe within the Asia region. They have like the exceptions there. And the rest just very quiet. And I think it's because we're online, it's something very nice to do, like coming back from a breakout room. That's such a nice scenario. So there has obviously been conversations and there's obviously something to share, but people are like, so wondering a little bit how that could play out. Maybe that's a tiny scenario.
So I have this with a group of women from the US. So it's not actually just Asian related. They go to breakout rooms. I know they're talking and I come back and I ask a question. And then there's one woman who speaks. And then on Tuesday, she actually left. And then everybody else started talking after she left.
She was the person in charge. Also, it felt.
Then we have the hierarchy coming in. This is
another. Absolutely, yeah. That's another, and it's gender based too. She's gone from like, anyways. I don't need to get into it, but okay.
Okay.
Cool.
So Flor will be director, and then she said she doesn't want to facilitate to see what's happened. So I guess we have 2 choices for facilitator, and even we can have first facilitator and second facilitator if we want to replay as well. So who would like to try it on, this silent situation?
Kate's like, no way.
So I guess if Kate is saying no way, maybe Teresa, you give another try.
Okay, I'll be the one who volunteers. Sure.
Thanks, friend.
You're welcome, friend. Okay, so I'm going to imagine that you've just come back from breakout rooms, okay?
Yes, and then we would need, maybe it's easier if we pick the one that wants to speak and fill up the times.
I'm the guy here. It's easy for me to do that. It's like
Okay.
I was actually thinking that because you want to play the French, it actually fit very well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Everything I say is obviously everyone should understand and listen to, you know? It's so interesting.
Okay, so
Okay.
we will simulate coming back from breakout. To do this, we will just turn off the video and then open it again, and then we start. You might stop anytime, Therese, with this timeout. Otherwise, I think we will start with a 10-minute-ish play and see what's happened then. So we can all close up the video and then opening up, and then we start.
Welcome back, everyone. Kate, are you with us? Okay. I'm hoping that you had some really rich conversations in your breakout rooms. Before we move on, I'd love to give some space for people to speak to anything significant that was spoken in their breakout rooms.
Well,
The floor is yours.
I don't know. I was talking with my partner in the breakout room, and what I noticed is that the it was not very clear, actually, the question, you know. I wonder, we were actually wondering, he spent most of the time actually talking about what exactly are they asking us to reflect on. It was not very clear. So there is nothing really significant that we can share in plenary now. But yeah, I mean, so it would be great if you could repeat to us what it is that we were supposed to discuss in the breakout. That'd be great.
Thank you, Ewan. So, what I had asked in the breakout room was for you to have. I'm like, I don't have anything prepared here. Um, so, what came up for you during your self-reflection? That was the question for you to share with your partner. What came up for you? So, before we went into breakout rooms, I gave you some time to reflect on the book that we're reading in certain contexts, and then I invited you to go into breakout rooms and share those self-reflections with your partner.
Well, okay, but I mean, the self-reflection, it's nice, but I think it's actually more important to really connect it with the business because you know this is something that we do on the time of the company. I mean, I appreciate that you give us some time to think for ourselves, but really it's something that yeah we should be all talking about something important, and there's some important issues around this product definition that and also some of the key concepts of the book. I mean, we decided to go for this book for good reason. So I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't have much to share about my self-reflection on this now that I hear. Thank you for reminding me anyway that this is what we were supposed to do. But I think we should actually move on to really the stuff about the key concepts of the book that are going to help us advance our business because that's really what matters here. I think.
Thank you for sharing your opinion, Ewan. Would anyone else like to share?
Maybe they were confused like us. Who knows?
Kate, did you want to say something? I saw your box light up.
Thanks, Teresa. That was just some noise in the background, but
Okay.
while I'm here, I can say something. That's fine. Um, in our breakout room, we discussed that, yeah, the reflection pointed out a real blind spot for us.
Thank you, Kate. Anyone else? So, do you know that there's a trick on Zoom that when you go into breakout rooms, I can see your microphones moving up and down. So I know you're talking there.
Maybe we should go back to the breakout room and discuss again because I don't know if anyone has to share anything here. I don't know.
I'm gonna time out. This is so funny. I'm getting like all like I don't ever get hot and bothered with this, but for some reason my temperature is rising and I'm like getting a little sweaty. Oh my gosh, I'm totally reacting to like not feeling like I'm prepared and that I know like what did they come back from and like what is the global context. But yeah, man, interesting. I totally felt some friction coming from my
And
response to you.
and we didn't even run the 10 minutes. We run 6 minutes.
Oh, we were supposed to do 10 minutes.
No, I said we start with 10 minutes and we see what's happened
Oh gosh, okay, yeah.
up to 10 minutes. So you were saying that your whole body was feeling uncomfortable?
Yeah, no, I mean like I literally like I'm starting to sweat a little bit, like and I'm like I feel hot. Because I'm feeling a lot of discomfort. And I think it's not just the discomfort in the silence. I'm quite comfortable with the silence, but it was how I felt attacked based on what Ewan said because of like he was saying you weren't very clear, you didn't give us very good directions. We like just his whole like response. And I don't think I've never had someone so directly challenge what we're doing ever.
I'm sorry.
And I love the accent that you're using.
I did on the French pronunciation. That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that in the end, I do just tend to move on. Like if there's literally nothing, I just move on. Or I'll invite people to put stuff in the chat or something like that. It's interesting because I'm thinking about the resistance line of deep democracy, and I'm thinking about like I make jokes. So the fact that I like said that thing about seeing you in the mic, like I do sometimes make that joke, specifically with this one group of women who like never talk. I'm like, I know you're talking in the breakout rooms. Like I kind of make jokes about it because it's like so silent sometimes. And I think in that context, there's a gender dynamic because I think I think sometimes women don't trust other women that they don't know, especially sometimes in a professional context. Like, who am I? What are they going to say that I'm potentially going to take back to HR, right? Or something like that. So I think that there's some fear in there that prevents them from speaking up.
Yeah. I appreciated your use of humor. Okay. That one wanted to make me break. And actually, what
I broke. I must break.
From a participant perspective, if I were really a participant in this thing, I would have immediately jumped on Ewan. I would have like come right out and been like, actually, I was really clear. But I was like, that's not the exercise. So, but the humor, yeah, I think that's a great strategy. If we weren't here intentionally being tough about it, I feel like that would have melted somebody.
Yeah. And I think I would have come back at Ewan as well and been like, oh, really? Well, I did put the directions in the chat. But I was like trying to be like, I was trying to be more, quiet.
I was actually unsure if you were laughing because of the exercise or you would have bring that laugh when you were telling about the Microsoft in Zoom. So I found this strategy quite, bringing the fact very smart. To say, actually, I know you were talking. The fact that you were laughing, I was a bit confused. It was she's laughing because we do the exercise, or would she laugh anyway?
I would laugh anyways.
Okay.
Like, so something that I've learned from like training in public speaking is I will do this quite a lot. Like I'll whisper in a group, like that I'm telling them a secret, but like it's really because I'm like, you know that I can hear it. I can see that you're talking in the breakout rooms. Like I do that to like bring the point home. And it often gets people laughing, but then sometimes they will speak.
Yeah, it's really for me, like being in this position. You all know me well. I never am in this position. I'm always the first to break a silence. I find this so ununderstandable that you don't like. I had such a good like empathy experience to just not share anything. I literally had to look somewhere else to just like be not engaged. I still have zero empathy for people who don't speak.
Mm.
I think for me, it's really so. And one thing I wanted to share, because this thing, what happened with Ewan coming in quite aggressive, not aggressive, yeah, like aggressive. Sorry, again from
No
books.
context.
This is really, this happened some of these tables that I was in, because we had these participants who would speak. Their sharing would sometimes be a little bit disgruntled, or be like, yeah, it was all fine, or yeah, okay, it made sense. Yeah, I don't think anybody else wants to share. Like, it did happen actually. So it's not for me. Like, it is maybe part of the silence as well, that those who are loud will actually start commenting on the silence or on the understanding. So that absolutely, that did happen actually as well. So I think it was a nice twist, not this aggressive, but like, it's a nice twist to it. Yeah.
So I just thought of another example while you were sharing, Flor. So on Tuesday with this group where I said there's these women who, like, nobody talks except for this one woman. So they were in breakout rooms and they were split up and they were doing post-it notes and stuff like that, and sharing and filling the post-it notes. And then they come back, and I invited them to, like, if there's anything that you don't understand, like, ask one of the other groups. And so one woman said, this post-it note is not clear to me. This is the woman who's fairly strong and vocal. She said, this post-it note's not clear to me. Could somebody from the other group, clarify for me? And nobody in that other group said anything, nothing. And so then I was like, well, what do you think they meant? And then, so she and I are having this conversation about what we thought the other group meant. It was like, but again, as soon as this woman left, she had to leave early. Then, like, people started talking.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful. You found the root cause and you solved it.
I'm going to say, I'm sorry, you can't come anymore. I'm not going to do that, but.
Yeah. Vy, can I check one thing with you? I'm just wondering if you want to go for another round, or in any case, what I think would be really nice is to hear what could have been a sort of co-facilitator buzz about it. But I don't know, I'm just checking with you.
Well, my feeling is that Kate didn't want to facilitate and Flor was director. So my feeling was that we can continue to the reflection and discuss about co-facilitation. But I want to hear from the group if you feel like do one more round of role play.
Can I suggest one thing? Because I think that doesn't prevent what you're suggesting, but I think it might add on. Like, I would like to offer, and Teresa, if you find this unhelpful, please let me know. If I would love personally to hear if you had one, like picking one of us as your co-facilitator, and you're having a break, and you're basically that co-facilitator is going to take over from you. What would you tell that person? How would you sort of open your heart about what just happened and prep him or her for what comes next?
So what would I say? So do you want me to actually tag somebody?
Yeah, because I think it makes it more real. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you can hand over to Kate and we switch off the camera.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kate?
Yeah.
Oh no, you guys are going to switch off the camera. Okay. Okay. So Kate, they're in breakout rooms. Again, I just wanted to let you know, when they come back, the last time they came back from breakout rooms, you were off doing something. But when they came back and I invited them to share in the plenary, essentially there was not much sharing except for one person who shared and they seemed to be resistant to kind of what we're doing here. And kind of the ethos that I got was that they felt that it was a waste of time. Okay. And then I made some jokes around the fact that I knew that they were talking, but then we ended up moving on because there wasn't a lot of voice except for this one person who seemed a little bit resistant to the fact that we're here. So just let me giving you a heads up that that's what happened.
All right. Thank you. How was the camera situation?
I think there was one person who wasn't back on camera. And I just checked in to make sure that they were there, and they were. So, but I'm not usually like mandatory camera on or camera off. So
cool. Great. Thanks. Anything else I should know?
I don't know. I'd love to know if you have some tricks to get more people speaking. I did make the joke that I knew they were talking, but yeah, okay. I'd love to know how you can if you can pull some more voices into the space, I'd love to learn from you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. You all right?
Mm-hmm. Felt a little hot and bothered by this one person, but I'm okay. Thank
I
you.
can understand. All right, here they come.
Cool, thanks.
Oh, are we doing it?
No, I don't.
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, there was a silence. Yeah.
But we can ask Teresa, how did it feel about sharing your discomfort? And what are you hoping Kate to help? Next co-facilitator.
So I'm glad that she asked me how I was, because I think that I didn't actually address how I was when I was sharing. I was just being very above, being very factual. I was trying to be very objective. But I think if I have a good relationship with my co-facilitator, I'd be like, oh my God, this guy's such an ass. I probably would have done that. But yeah, so I think it showed Kate's, relationship, like that she was checking in with how I was doing and how I was feeling. But it makes me think how important it is to have a co-facilitator in situations where there might potentially be resistance, so that you can, I usually, all of my work is voluntary. Nobody shows up who doesn't want to read this book and talk about this subject. So I don't have a lot of resistance in my work. But how important it is to have somebody to, when that cultural friction or just internal friction or whatever comes up, that you can have somebody to pass the baton to, is so important, I think.
And Kate, how did it feel to receive from Teresa the situation in the room?
I appreciate, I was like, oh, she's really holding back judgment right now. She's really got her professional face on. And it was hard for me not to be like, oh God, that guy's such a douche. But yeah, so I appreciated that. Just if we were doing this for real, I appreciated the fact that there was not a lot of not trying to bias me, but no information that would truly bias. It was just here's a situation. And yeah, of course, I'm gonna check in, because it's a hard situation. So yeah, co-facilitators got to take care of each other.
I need to do more co-facilitation. Can you guys invite me to your things? I don't do it very much. I want a sidekick. I want to be someone's Robin.
I was actually reflecting that it was nice to have, in that situation, observing the co-facilitator, just to have someone that you can share what's going on and can understand what's going on. This is wonderful. So to ventilate it, just the fact to speak it out, how much it helps the state of mind.
And if you have a co-facilitator that is coming from sort of complementary cultures, additional cultures, that's another pair of lenses to read the room and understand how to go about certain behaviors. Of course, I was embodying a very extreme version, but I've come across people like the one I impersonated, maybe not quite as aggressive, but borderline, really. And I'm like, what? Yeah, you really feel like a douchebag, go back to your cave, but you can't.
I'm thinking the one way, the preventative way is assigning one person, saying you're going to go into breakout rooms at the end, make sure one person is going to, elect one person to come back and share. And then to say, we might not have time to get to all of those people, but at least then there's one person. And so I'm saying this out loud to you to remind myself for this group that I'm going to see next week again, that I should do that, because it's so quiet sometimes.
But that's I was thinking that announcing beforehand that you're going to have somebody from each group sharing. I think that's a really good way. And to speak to the loud person, right? I run small coaching groups, mostly women as well. And there's one who always comes in, and not aggressively, but just always sharing. And I cut her off. last couple of times because I was getting negative feedback. I was like getting personal negative feedback from some other people saying like we have to do something about this, and I agreed. And then I just said, Rose, can we have somebody else speak now? Like I was just like that. I was like, can we have somebody else have another go? And I also started encouraging use of the digital hands just to avoid her always, you know. So things like that, just cutting off these aggressive in terms of participation, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've had success low key behind the scenes giving people feedback just and like pointing out the impact on the group. So, but like that's in terms of a longer thing. With a short session, do you guys ever just call out the silence?
Yeah.
It's usually what I do. And like maybe I'll crack a joke, but I'll also give permission, like that's okay. And also point out like the impact on the group. It's like blah, 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 wisdom of the group, blah, blah, blah. If we're not sharing, then collectively, maybe we're not learning as much as we could. That's why you're here. I believe in you and your wisdom.
Yes, and I would like to add one more thing around silence before we move to the last part. My experience about working with Swedish and Italian, the silence mean completely different. So as a facilitator, sometimes you can feel uncomfortable for the silence. In the Nordic countries, the silence means that they are reflecting and maybe they're digesting. So it's also to be self-aware that, maybe this is what they want, and remember who we are serving. Is it serving ourselves that we want to hear something, or are we serving the group? We had a lot of conversation with this with Flor about who are we really serving.
And language. Sorry to form back to always the favorite topic.
Topic.
I called out on some people in South Korea, and I realized why they weren't speaking so much, because it's just really hard for them to speak in English. And like in big group, they feel even more self-conscious. So that was for me also. I was like, oh yeah, we have that element too. So
yeah, I think it's important to not be judgmental about it. Like exactly. I think calling out is fine, and I might even call out my perspective, like coming from the US and as a native speaker of the language that we're going in, and being like, I can understand all these reasons you might be quiet also. It's great. It could be great if we weren't.
Yeah, it's something to know how to navigate. And then just to give one last tip, and then we really move on. I mean, I do find for myself, like on top of indeed prepping people before breakouts, to have one spokesperson. Sometimes on top of that, or instead of that, I ask people they go into the conversation and breakouts, and to tell them, when you come back, I'm going to ask every one of you to just share one sentence about what's coming up. And not everyone does it, but actually also just getting into the habit of either speaking or writing it out, you start seeing your voice or hearing it, and that makes a difference to sort of help people open up a little bit. But yeah. So 5 minutes where I would like to invite you to think. Let me actually share my screen, because this might be a good starting point. But again, not restricted to that. If you think about this sort of 8, 9 different typical scenarios of intercultural frictions, and number 9 is there's many others that are not captured here. I would love you to reflect on what it is you are seeing, learning, discovering, or relearning, because sometimes just like being reminded about something. What is the one insight that you're picking up from thinking about this, which we're such a rich terrain, which we just barely scratched the surface of today. But yeah, and thinking about, for instance, the scenarios, which ones do you see like, oh, there's an edge that I want to explore there, and or something that I'd like to know how to facilitate better. So take a minute maybe to think about it, and if you want to share it verbally or in writing, that'd be great. And also a nudge, any next step would be great also. You all have the mural, so I'm gonna remove the sharing here. So whenever someone is ready, feel free to. Oh, we lost V.
Oh.
I hope she's coming back. Yeah, feel free to pop when you're ready.
I continue to be very intrigued by this idea of silence. Sorry, what happened? Oh, the popcorn. Yeah.
Sorry.
Popcorn.
So cute.
Great.
Again, just understanding what it means, my own relationship with it. And again, we brought up in our scenario sketching that maybe falls under other as a next step, gender, really, because I felt very differently treated in different cultural settings as a woman than my male co-facilitators or even, other people I know. So that's something for me that I'm seeing also how I can work with that a little bit in this cultural contexts, if it's cultural or where that comes from. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Bill. And by the way, I would, I don't know if this is even an invitation for you to do something about it, but if you're up for it, let's have a quick chat about potentially doing a session together on this.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think it's I think it could be a very nice friction, final friction lab, because it's a really important topic. Yeah.
For sure. Thank you. Anyone else? And by the way, just because we're reaching the end and you might have to go very soon, or maybe you can linger on for a few more minutes. I'm just putting also the process feedback, anything about, rose, bud, and thorn. But yeah, anything either on your content reflections, insights, next steps, and or process about the session? Anything?
I'm going to keep following up on this whole silence thing because I'm so glad, Flo, that you brought up silence, because now I'm like, oh gosh, it's everywhere. And so like how I see it and how the groups are, and I work also, I'm working with a company right now that is the leadership is all white, older white men. And the groups that I work with are very diverse groups of women. So we have Latina women, and we have Black women, and we have Asian women, and it's all an American company. And their relationship with silence and their relationship with the organization and the American culture, and so there's the sexism, and then there's the racism, and like there's so much intercultural intersectionality around the silence as well. So I think it's something that is important for me to speak to as well, and just call out sometimes, and be more intentional about my relationship with the silence, and understanding also my privilege, right? That it's easy for me to speak, and recognizing that for them it's not necessarily so easy.
Thank you for this. Many textures to silence. Yeah, Kate.
So actually next week I'm going on site in Warsaw to do two full days of like communication training for like young professionals, like people who are like maybe, in their second or third professional year at a global highly hierarchical architecture firm. And there is just, it's such a Dutch design. There's so much crammed into it. It's not my design. But yeah, so this is making me think about, there are a few minutes devoted to intercultural communication. And so I was just thinking about some more like nuanced ways to sprinkle the whole design with this level of awareness, self-awareness, and then awareness of others. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you for that. And also, yeah, so anything on process again, also, in any case, I want to thank you just in case you need to go anytime, but would love to have you for a few more minutes for any reflections on the session, anything. I could say something myself, but I'll keep it for a bit later. Any rose, thorn, bud, or any other reflection?
I don't understand what you're asking us.
Process feedback.
That's a joke.
You're being so direct here. I'm just wondering. Yeah, Rose.
That was a joke.
Rose
It was a
Fallen
joke.
Bud. Yeah, okay.
I totally thought you were asking.
She's just mocking you and your
Oh.
participant.
This is a bias of the profession. I mean, sometimes I start really I become gullible because I really take things with sort of good faith, but it plays tricks because like people are like, oh, you're so serious, you're so dumb, you know, like.
Oh.
Sorry for not picking it up there.
Sorry. I didn't intend it to be mean, but I think
No, I know.
No, I've seen this in the other friction labs that I was able to join, how powerful actually role play is. I forget that sometimes, like to actually embody it and be in these different roles. I really also appreciate being in a participant role. So I think that because I think we forget that sometimes. I love the framework you brought. I felt very, it was a wonderful sort of full session of interesting references and ways of looking at it. Yeah,
Thank you.
be into it. Mm-hmm.
I do have to go pretty soon, but I loved going back to the culture map because I haven't done that book in a while, so it was really great as a reminder to get back to it. And in the dot voting, kind of dot placing, I also liked that you invited us to split dots because in my professional life I'm much more linear, and I'm pretty good with confrontation more with strangers. I am totally confront avoidant with my family. Like just being able to recognize that there are multiple facets to who we are. And I also just right upon the point that I was kind of cornered into being the one on the spot. I'm glad that I did it because it makes me realize how safe I feel as a facilitator most of the time. So I'm like, oh gosh, I love that my work is all voluntary based and nobody's all resistant. So like I've created this like lovely space for myself. Although I am doing a book circle right now that's a book for women that there's men in it, and they're like, yeah, I'm not getting anything out of this book. I love the sessions, but the book itself. And I'm like, oh, well, I don't care because I didn't write the book. But just how, in a way, how lucky I am and how much. But it's also good for me to play with that edge and understand a little bit and have more empathy for some of you who are leading sessions where it's not necessarily all voluntary. It's a great learning edge. Yeah, I think I mean, this is nothing you can control, but it would have been fun to have multiple scenarios to role play. If there had been more people, I think that could have been fun.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for this.
okay, I'm gonna go.
Thank you, Teresa.
Hopefully, I'll see you later this afternoon for the BYOB.
Oh, I'm gonna try, but I'm not sure.
I can't
Okay,
join
and
with
I
you.
actually
Doctor-
think Kate, you might be facilitating with me next month. I don't know. Anyways, I have to
Okay.
figure out. I don't know who's facilitating with me for November. Anyway, lovely to see you all. Maybe
to
see
see
you
you.
later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Any buds, forms, anything always helpful before you go?
So I really love I love practice, right? And I love role plays, even though I didn't have the energy for it today and I forced Teresa into it. But so for me, I really love just like a sprinkling. I thought it was a great example of like, okay, connecting to the content and then like a sprinkling of theory and then light practice, heavier practice, and then a reflection. So I thought the structure was really lovely. And yeah, I would have been interested to see You Can't Control This, like how it would have all worked with more people. I mean, of course, with fewer people, we just had lots of time to talk and that was amazing. So, but I wish more, like, this is a message for the public. Everybody should come to this because I think
Hope you're listening.
I think yes. There's so much potential here. So thank you for doing it. And yeah, I think that just for me, maybe because I'm slower right now, like having some prompts or some, not prompts, but like scenarios to like start my juices flowing would have been good, because as of right now, I was like a little bit sleepy and not fresh, digging up my professional experiences.
Yeah, cool.
I should say more specific than the ones were outlined that were outlined at the start.
More juicy details to really set up the scene and everything. Yeah. Yeah.
I have one last reflection about our scenario that we sketched about silence, right? If we could, but maybe then you need more like time, is if we could then connect it back to the cultural map. Like, where does this silence in the cultural map come from? Is it conflict avoiding? Is it because they're too hierarchical? Where does, like if you then have these scenarios, then where is on the cultural map does that show up, for example?
Yeah.
Just,
And we could have done that with our personal stories as well from the start, from either direction.
Yeah, true. Which I mentioned is just honing it entirely. Great. Thank you. I think for me, just two reflections. One is I think not maybe we were not detailed enough in explaining in setting up the case to really have these things, because I understand, I mean, there is and also I was not very helpful in my role in sort of challenging her when she didn't really have the time to come up with a full-fledged scenario. But it's just a detail, and also just a reflection that it's such a rich topic, and I feel frustrated not to have gone like much deeper into that, because there's so much, even just exploring our personal like it's been actually really enjoyable, the little personal anecdotes that we all came up with, because I mean this, we all have this, we all face this. But feel very privileged to have had such a lovely group today to play with us.
And if I may have a final words as well. Thank you, Ewen, for bringing the Friction Lab framework to explore these cross-culture topics, because it's something that we also discussed with Flor, although we did something different. But I think it's really useful for myself as well. And I see how much the role plays is powerful to have this seeing others. And it's really something that deserves to be even more explored. So this is my big takeaway. Plus the reflection on silence, which is always fascinating about what we could do and what this means. So many thanks for you for joining. Thanks, Ewen, for the invitation to co-facilitate this session. So this is what I wanted to do.
Thank you for leading this, because really the architect of this session is Vy. So, we work together, but she was the lead. It was great to work with you on this. And one last tune as we go.
Where's this from?
This one is Finnish, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. L'ultimo calendario. Hey, thank you so much, folks. And gender. I'll come back to you.
I think we could do one before the end of the year for sure.
Yeah,
that would be
great.
a good topic. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Let's be in touch. Thank you. Bye.
Oh, let me stop the recording, by the way.